Hello, this is Vaso X Vaso Evil O from Baroda, and today I'm very lucky to be sitting with Sandhya Bordawekar Gajjar, who's what should I term you as? I always think of you as a critic and a writer.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah. You write criticism for Art India and different magazines.
And different other magazines,
right.
Yes. I also curate shows and do catalog writing and gallery texts and stuff like that.
But you've had a long history with Baroda.
I've always been in Baroda, and I prefer to write about artists in Baroda because with most artists I have followed their careers ever since they've shown in their display, final year display work, and then most artists decide to continue to stay and work in Baroda even though they've come from different parts of India, because the Faculty of Finance is extremely well known and they like to make a career here.
And
Baroda,
today, if I can just interject, today we're going to be talking about advice to young artists, I think is our decided topic, right? Advice to young artists, because you have a lot of advice, yes?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't call it advice. Nobody likes advice these days. But since I have been working with young artists, I know of their fears, the challenges they face, and the aspirations they have. Sometimes I feel that they need a little bit of guidance and then they are fine. And when that guidance is not forthcoming, they do get onto the right road, but it takes them a longer time. And in that longer time, they have lost a few years of work, which could have been good work, which they could have produced if they had that, if they knew about these things. And that's all. So I think this is a very good opportunity for me just to talk about a few things, and whoever is listening or watching, maybe it might help, and if it does, I would be most happy. I would be the happiest person.
Well, I'm in that strange state because I'm somewhat a collector and I'm also an artist, so I see things from both sides. And one thing as a collector, when young artists wanted to show me prints, when I was collecting prints, I would ask them to send me low-res images, and they'd send me these 11 megabyte files that took 30 minutes to download, that kind of thing.
Not just that, it would often just knock your computer down, and then you would...
Right, and one thing I learned, and one of the young artists actually told me, they said, well, they don't teach us these things in school, which is sad, because part of what the art education these days has to consist of is learning how to use Photoshop, learning how to make a PDF, all of these things help you in your career.
Yeah, so that is, if we imagine a training in the fine arts as vocational training, I mean, you're trained to follow that vocation and not finish your 3 years or 4 years of art school and then go wandering about for jobs. If that is not what we expect our young artists to do, I think it would be very good if there is a short course on how to manage your life as an artist.
Yes, which is a difficult thing.
Yes, it is a difficult thing, but I think if, you see, you must understand that Baroda was also designed, the Faculty of Fine Arts was also designed as a teaching, practicing faculty. This was one of the few colleges which had the timings of 8 to 12 or 1, so that artists could go home or continue to stay in the faculty and work in their studios, and then have exhibitions and do murals and public art and all of that, where their students would help them and in the process learn the ropes of actually what it means to be an artist in real life.
Right, and also I talk to a lot of young artists, and so many times they seem rather confused about what it means to be an artist. And one comment I often see on Facebook, young artists will say, oh, people act like art is nothing except about money, and art is not about money. Well, that's true in many ways. but then also they can't turn around the next day and complain that nobody's supporting them, because what is support? It's some sort of money.
Yeah.
So you do have to be aware of how do you fund your art. And I once wrote an article for Art and Deal that was called The Businessman, the Scholar, and the Hermit. And I broke it, remember that?
Yeah.
I broke it down. You can be the scholar who's totally academic in your approach to art, and you're probably going to end up in a university. You can be a businessman and heavily promote yourself and think like a businessman and trying to get your art out there and sold. Or you can be a hermit artist and
sit quietly in the corner.
sit quietly and just devote yourself to your art, but nobody's going to notice you then. You know, there are very few people like Van Gogh who actually become well known unless somebody discovers them. And Van Gogh,
but after they die.
yes, Van Gogh was lucky enough to have his brother Theo. You know, and then there were a few other lucky connections that brought him to attention. So, you know, unless you have that gallery who takes you on and promotes you for you know, and they do the promotion, you're just lost as a hermit artist. So the best thing is to combine all three, I feel. You have to have all three of these elements.
Yes, absolutely, you have to have all three. And you also, so that's where my first point comes in, that an artist, a student artist should always imagine himself to be a professional. The way a dentist is a professional, the way an architect is a professional, the way a mechanical engineer is a professional, and work accordingly. The first thing in that is that you need to know how to profile yourself, how to write a biodata. Many of them do not even know how to write a biodata, and these days a single biodata does not work for everything, because an artist now is writing to the gallery, the artist is writing to a funding agency for a project, the artist is writing to a residency organizer for a residency, and though the basic tenets of your biodata remain the same, how you tweak it to be able to convince the person that you are the guy for the job is very important.
Right. You have to, I have like a standard bio.
Yeah.
But I've modified it so many times for different occasions that if you look at my computer file now, I probably have 50 different standard bios, but they've all been tweaked for different situations.
Exactly. I have actually got a folder on my laptop which says, you know, which has different bios. And even if you have a bio which is standardized for a residency, when you apply for a new one, you've got to go through it very carefully, find out what they're looking for, whether you are interested in that, and then again tweak that bio to meet.
And you might disagree, but another thing I do when people ask to see images, and I know it's a particular curator for a particular project or whatever, I just don't send them low-res JPEGs or whatever. But I always make a PDF with an introduction to the work and how it fits the curator's concept, and then I put in the images and I put my biodata at the end, so they get one PDF to go through and look at, and it's a very professional way of doing it, I feel.
Yeah, that is the way to do it, but to do that, the artist, the young artist or the student artist should also know that what is a gallery looking for?
Right.
What is a curator looking for? And these two are the most important people who will provide that artist platform for his work in a professional manner. So the biodata, for instance, you go back to the biodata, if the artist has been picked up in any exhibition by a curator, that has to be mentioned in the biodata. He or she cannot just bung it into a group show.
Right.
Which is very different, because a group show can be any group shows. I mean, there are plenty of group shows going around. Or even a solo which has been curated by a particular person adds a completely different dimension to the biodata.
Another thing that happens in social media is a young artist will ask to friend me, and if I accept their friend request, which I'm a little choosy about these days actually, so I accept their friend request, and then like the same day or the next day they're saying hi in Facebook Messenger, and they ask for my email because they want to send images of my work.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little tactless because I mean, at least you can make an effort to like sort of be a little friendly first, you know,
But
before
that
you get to
is
that point.
that is courtesy. That
Yes.
is social media etiquette, which
Right.
many people do not know.
Right.
So I think with social media now becoming so extraordinarily popular and new kinds of things coming up on social media all the time, Instagram and this and that and the other, I think understanding social media etiquette is also important. It's basic etiquette actually, but many people think that because it is free and because you are so easily accessible, you can just contact somebody whether they like it or not at any time of the day or night.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It is,
I mean,
it
a
is.
lot of artists, including myself, I mean, I post images on Facebook and Instagram sometimes, and sometimes you get that direct contact from somebody, I mean, sometimes really fast.
Yes.
But, oh, I really, really like this. Is it for sale? But I have contracts with, Gallery Espace now for the miniatures, so I always have to say you have to go through Gallery
Yeah.
Espace. Right now with the photographs, I'm kind of free, and then sometimes I can say, yeah, we can talk, but I don't really like doing it. I prefer the gallery because
Yeah.
I'm not a good negotiator,
Yeah.
so I prefer a gallery to have that function.
Correct.
Um,
So there are many things to professionalism, and this is something which artists, if they are taught in the art school, good enough. If they are not taught in the art school, I think artists need to get together to form groups and understand from each other what is to be done, because ultimately whatever you're being taught is a sum total of a certain kind of experience which has been put together over a number of years. When you have a group of friends, they are also talking about that same experience. So that is, I think,
Especially
very valuable.
if you have a group of friends and you all have a common interest in your art as to what you're doing, either the aesthetic or the social issue or whatever, then form a movement. I mean, promote yourself as a movement, write a manifestos, those have gone out of fashion,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. But I mean, that helps people take notice of you, that you're not just an individual, but something exciting is happening.
Yes. In fact, to tell you the truth, it was, I think, from 2003, 2002 or 2003, for 7 years long, I worked with a group of young artists just out of college, or maybe 2 or 3 years out of college, and every year we had a show in the month of February. It was a show by the artist, for the artist, of the artist. And they put it all together because that was also the time when the galleries were not very welcoming to young artists, as is the case even today. Right? And galleries are looking for a particular kind of work, or they are looking for a particular artist to be able to sell their work. So that is also a very important thing, artists to get together and to learn from each other how to deal with galleries, with which gallery you have to behave in a particular manner, who you have to be a little careful about, and safeguard your own work and your own interests. These kind of things they would come to know only if they came together. And I would like to mention here that before that little boom time we had in 2006, 7, 8, whatever it was, young artists in Baroda especially did get together and talk, did
Yes.
celebrate one artist selling a work by having a bunch of bhajiyas and chai together. But post that time, there's been a kind of unseen barrier between artists. Nobody tells each other.
Everybody's for themselves
Yes,
now, I
yes.
think.
So I think we have sailed many years down that road now, and now down that canal, I would say. And I think those things have to be broken up, and artists need to come together. And if galleries are not showing their shows, they should just do informal shows in their own homes, in their studio spaces, etc. These are spaces which are now acceptable. You don't really need all the fancy lighting and all of that anymore, and invite people to see your work and just take it forward. I think that is something which they
Taking
have to
it
do.
forward is a big thing. I mean, that's one of the things I always felt when I looked at young artists' work, is after they had graduated, what had they continued doing? Because, I hate it myself when people ask me to show new work. because sometimes I just don't have it. Like right now I'm totally focused on miniatures because I have a show coming up, so I'm not doing many new photographs. So if somebody wants to see my new photographs, it's like, well, I haven't made any for a long time. Next year that will happen, you know. But the thing is, if you have new work to show, it tells the collector that you're working, that you're doing something, you know. So some of these printmakers, I would say, well, show me your work, and everything was dated from, you know, so many years previously, and I say, well, what have you been doing recently? And it's like, oh, I don't do much printmaking anymore. And that would really discourage me. I was like, oh, so they don't really take printmaking that seriously. You know, so I really am the believer art is a full-time project. You're doing it all the time, every day. It's a business, and like if you run a business, every businessman knows that the employees have days off. The employees go home at a certain time and they have their freedom. But the businessman is even working on Sunday many times because they've got to do the books and the taxes and make plans for the future week and how they're going to grow. So being an artist is a full-time job. It's not easy. The pay is often low because it's very competitive, and many times you have to wait till you're in your 40s before you really start making money and getting noticed and doing well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sad truth of it.
So that brings me to the point of how young artists should price their work. Well, that's a huge, huge issue. And many artists have really very strange methods or logic by which they price their work, and they often price themselves out of the market.
Right.
So my advice, if that's the word to be used, is that while you are still in college, speak to your teachers. At least in the Faculty of Fine Arts, most teachers are practicing artists. They know what the market is all about, right? So speak to them, find out how you need to price your work and how you need to take it ahead. Like once your work of a particular size, for instance, and a particular medium sells at X amount of rupees, and then it continues to sell at that for maybe a year or 2 years, then you know that the market is accepting of that price. And then you can make it a little higher.
Exactly, and don't raise it too quickly because you can never go down.
Yeah. And then you're not sold.
If you lower your prices, it just kills you because then everybody thinks, oh, they're not doing well. He's lowering his prices or she's lowering her prices. You know, and the other thing is to know your price once you've settled out, because nothing seems more unprofessional than when you ask a young artist, you see this beautiful painting they've done or sculpture, whatever, and you say, oh, I really like that. I wouldn't mind buying it. How much does it cost? And then they kind of shuffle their feet and, oh, I don't know, you know, and all this hesitation.
Yeah.
They should have a price. It is like, what was the example you were using? The dentist.
Yeah.
You know, how much is the root canal? They'll tell you how much the root canal is going to be.
Yeah. So I think that is very important, and if their teachers are not able to tell them, or if they are in art schools where teachers are not practicing artists and really do not know, there is no point in going to ask something to somebody who doesn't know what it is all about, then I think they should ask some of their senior artists. And like in every profession, I would say that senior people do help younger people in that same profession. I don't think, one person might say, I'm not going to help you, or two people, but the third one will help.
Right.
So I think they have to ask them, how did you do it? And then not go by exactly what that person is saying, but then they then have kind of a baseline idea as to this is the way it is to be done, and then they take it forward. But this is something they should know.
I say, are we going back to the businessman, the scholar, and the hermit? So you should be a scholar before you do your art, so that you know your art history, you know sort of what you're fitting into or fighting against or whatever the case might be. Then you should be a hermit when you do your art and don't let anything distract you and do the best job possible. But then you've got to turn on the businessman side, and that's when people come in and ask you, what's the price of whatever you've done? You've got to know it, and you've got to say it confidently, you know, because when you say that confidently, it says, like, I'm sure of myself, people are buying this.
Yeah.
You know, this is how much it costs.
Yeah.
You don't buy it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
So I mean, learning that is a process for young artists, I think.
Yes, it is a process, and that process needs to be strengthened by reading up on what is happening in the art world. I mean, I have often seen artists who come to me and say, I've been featured in Art India or Art etc. or Art and Deal or whatever it is, and I would say, oh, I'm so happy, show me who has written, and they actually show me an advertisement.
Oh, yeah.
So many of them do not really understand what it really means to be covered by the media, and which media, because you can be covered by the popular media in a different way, you can be
Right.
covered by the critical media in a different way, and both add to your movement forward. That is one thing. But coming to the business part of it, what you explained, I also think that not all student artists become great artists,
No.
right? So only a certain percentage of the students who graduate every year will find it in their lifetime to do some fabulous work. Okay? What do the rest do in that case? So my advice again, as you said, would be that they should look for other opportunities. And other opportunities in art. I think working with architects is not a bad thing.
Right.
Doing commission work is not a bad thing, because from starving to getting some money to do, you don't need to listen to everything they're telling you to do. Okay?
Well, you think of M.F. Hussein painting the old movie
So
hoardings.
everybody did it.
Right.
It's not. You have the biggest names today who don't need the money also doing commissioned work. Right? So that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for an artist who realizes that they may not be really good at conceptualizing of work, but they may have the technique. And that technique can be used to make functional objects, which are very, very different from what you get in the market. And they are very beautiful, and people are willing to pay the X plus X plus X price for that.
I also want to say, I mean, there's this whole issue of de-skilling, and I think I've told you this before, but I mean, I've been in the position sometimes of reviewing young artists' portfolios, and they would show me this beautiful drawings, this draftsmanship that was done with graphite or charcoal, and they were like sketches they did at the bus stop or the chai shop or the barber shop or just on the street. And I would be like, oh, these people, they're so talented, because they get the architecture, they get the expression on the faces, they get the mood, all of this stuff, and then they get to the university, and it's like they just forget that they have the ability to do that. And suddenly they're doing these very simplistic things that I think they think are trendy or will be popular, contemporary, and it's like, utilize the skill you have, because not everybody has that. Understand your strengths and use them.
Yeah, I think
Do you
so.
agree?
I do agree, and
Right.
I think this realization should come early on in life, so they're not begging around for things. That they shouldn't come down to that level. Or they're not being told by their families that, look, we told you not to do this. They should have self-respect. I think you can do that in some part of your life, and then you still love your art, you can go back to it. You have then, maybe sometime you'll have to get out of the business you are in, because that business is also taking up your time.
Right.
But now you have the money. You don't need to worry about where your next meal is coming from or how you're going to pay the rent.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
But you can also make your art.
Right.
Then you can make it for yourself. You may not go to a gallery.
You had some other points. Are
Yes.
we missing anything?
Sandhya
made a list. So
Yes. So I think I kind of think we have covered all. The one issue which I have, which I need to explain or talk about Indian artists, is that we have a diversity of languages,
Yes,
right? So
that's a strength and it's a
that
weakness.
is a strength and that can be a weakness, because I have seen the contemporary Indian art market is very English driven.
Yes.
Yes. For how long it is going to remain English driven, I do not know. But for the time, it certainly is English driven. And I have many times seen artists with very poor work, but who can articulate well, get on.
Right.
And some artists who do really good work, but are poor in their English language
That holds
skills.
a lot of people back, and it's really, I mean, I
It's
could
really-
name names right now of people
Yeah.
I know personally. It's really sad, and
Yeah.
they're so talented, but they don't have the language ability and the language of the art world. And I've experienced it myself, because even though I've done well in India, because most of the art class speaks English, and the art books are in English, the art magazines are in English, so I mean you could just read and plug in pretty easily here if you're an English speaker. At least you can understand what's going on. But in Thailand, because I spent part of my time in Thailand, Thailand has a huge art scene, and people say, why aren't you doing anything in Thailand? You should do this and that. Well, I have had a couple shows in Thailand, but the Thai art scene is opaque to me, because all the books, the magazines, it's all in Thai. So it's not like I can just pick up books in Thailand and learn the history of contemporary Thai art.
It's not
I
very-
feel like the person who speaks Telugu or something
yeah,
here
yeah.
when I'm in Thailand. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I can't, it's really hard for me to be a part of this world.
Yes, yeah. So that is a challenge, and I think artists who come from the hinterland, I would advise them that try to learn some basic English. Yeah. And once you learn that basic English, please do not talk art theoretical English.
Yes.
Because that confuses the hell out of everyone. Nobody understands.
Right, right.
You yourself most
Art
of the time
speak.
do not understand what you're saying. You are trying to make an impression on the person who's listening that you know. Just be simple. Just be true to what you're saying, and just be true to your art. And I think most of your job will be done.
I agree so much, because I read art statements from young artists, and it's like they've just pulled every trendy buzzword in the
Yeah,
book out
and then
and
just
thrown it
strung
on the
it together.
paper. And I'm like, okay, but I mean, write from your heart. When I write an artist statement, I try to write
Yeah.
from my heart. This is what I'm trying to say,
That's it. So
So,
that's it. I think if they follow this few basic.
but I
things-
also think, the language thing, which is such a huge issue, I wish there were more art magazines in India in the local languages. Now, there are some, obviously, but there's not enough. And even the big magazines like Take and Art and Deal would be wonderful if once in a while they included a article in Hindi or something.
Yeah, there is one magazine which comes out of Delhi, which is Canvas, it is called, which is in Hindi. But more than these magazines also, and I am trying to do that in Baroda a number of times, and I've been successful to some extent, is get the local papers to cover art, and to get a local artist who knows Gujarati to write for them, so that it is not just a report that such a exhibition opened in such a place. It's not just a report, but that person goes a little beyond that to explain what that artist has done, what is the work all about, what is the background of that artist, etc., so that local people can come and see the shows.
So we've probably used up our 20 minutes. We try to keep this at 20 minutes.
I think so.
We covered it all.
I
Thank
hope
you, Sandhya Bordawekar Gajjar.
Yeah, thank
So
you
nice
very
that
much
you are
also.
here. I think I teased you last time. I was happy you were here, not sitting on the railroad tracks to Denver.
Yes.